Hello, blessed. It's Tuesday for me, and fourth week of Lent, and I'm thinking a lot about Mary as Easter approaches. I think a lot about womanhood, period. A lot about personhood, and to me, this very troubling movement toward the sort of disintegration or dissolution culturally of the glory of the human person. As a woman who has been self supporting my entire life, including the 16 years I was married, um, I have sort of forged my way. I love men. I love the massive differences between men and women. Um, if you think there are no different, like go to the gym. I was in the gym the other day. This is a woman at the gym. There's like dead silence, like this. You get a guy who comes in, and all of a sudden you hear like, ugh, ugh. It just and thank heaven for the difference. I love being a woman, and I think my thing is if you are living full throttle, taking risks, holding the tension of the human condition, trying 1,000% to fulfill whatever little mission on earth feel you were put here to do, holding the tension of every, which Catholicism does, which Christ does on the cross, holding the tension of every possible existential, human, metaphysical, eschatological conflict and paradox, all held within the cross. There is nothing bigger or wider or more inclusive than Catholicism. And to me, every attempt to, you get these people who are like, oh, you poor thing, you're just not able to think for yourself. You're just a pathetic lemming who blindly follows along. As if those of us who gladly allow the teachings of the church to be the frame for our existence, as if you haven't pondered and continue to ponder and wrestle with all of these paradoxes day after day. If there was something wider, I would have picked it. Um, or it would have, I should say, it would have chosen me, because I do feel Christ found me a little lost, wandering lamb and chose me, knowing that he and the cross and the faith corresponded to every desire and question of my heart. Anyway, um, so if you're living that way, full throttle, I have never felt oppressed, discriminated against. I mean, if you have any kind of self-esteem or self-respect, which I didn't for many years, but um, you say, like say a guy makes an I mean, you just like stop that guy dead in his tracks. There's no question. You simply make a boundary. It's like, oh, no, no, no. Uh-uh. No, we're not going to go there. We're not going to use that kind of language. We're not going to use those kind of innuendos. Like if you have any kind of common sense, like, for example, you know that not to go to a job interview at night in someone's apartment, in their bathroom. I mean, so and I don't want to be, um, uh, I don't want to be glib about our vulnerabilities and our frailties as human beings, as women, of course, and of course there are hideous, true abuses, domestic abuse, human trafficking, all kinds of horrible, uh, violent, rape, horrible things that go on. But to me, the best way to counteract those is not to live a lie or to succumb to some kind of ideology that doesn't ring true. It's to live out my life in the most courage and integrity that I can. And therefore, I think when you do that, you absolutely do not have to go around feeling like a victim. That's been my experience. I'm not saying it should be or is everyone else's, but that's been my experience. So it pains me. I read an article about the other day about had to do with International Women's Day, and it's these people, women in the church, um, talking about how, sort of complaining that these characteristics, such as, I wrote them down, love, spirituality, nurturing, graciousness, delicacy, care, empathy, uh, traditionally attributed to women. I'm like, thank you. No kidding. This is the best of us. I own it. I mean, I wish I had more of those things. Why would we want to repudiate those things? But that's what these women are doing. They're women in the church, oh, well, men can be, those are just social constructs, and men can have those things too, definitely. And that's great. We celebrate that too. But I mean, it's like saying, like, by virtue of our wombs, this is my thing. Women have a womb. It absolutely colors everything about us. Um, how we think, how we move through the world. It's like the sea we swim in, to the point where, of course, we can't even really see it. But um, I don't understand the movement supposedly on behalf of women to be more like men. So and I want to tell this little story that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about, because I think, anyway, so this was a few years ago. I happened to be in Ireland. It was August, and I was at a place where they didn't, um, it's kind of rural, and therefore they didn't have a daily mass. And it was the Feast of the Assumption. I think it's August 15th. The Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, right? It's a holy day of obligation. And to me, anything that has to do with Mary, I'm all about. Yes, let us honor our Blessed Mother, who embodies all of those feminine characteristics to the nth degree. And so, but where to go to mass. I want to, it's a holy day of obligation. I want to get there. I got to get there. So it turns out there's this place down the, it was a mile and a half or something. You could walk to it. And it was not a church per se, but it's a retreat center run by this, according to some of the people who told me, this wonderful free thinking um, priest, right? So, okay, great. Go to mass. And as I approach the place, I see like Tibetan prayer flags. Um, okay, whatever. Walk in, and it's like it's not a church; it's a meeting room, and there's no, a crucifix is nowhere in sight. What I see is a giant statue of Buddha. Okay, this is Catholic Mass. So what proceeds to happen is, and all these other women were at a retreat that this priest was leading. So they're sort of uh, yeah, these are all, you could just see, okay, these are like supposedly free thinkers. They're not going to be confined by the stultifying rigidity of the church. And the priest proceeds to open with this, to me, unbelievably paternalistic, talk about mansplaining, proceeds to tell us how he's totally in solidarity with the hideous oppression that we have had to suffer in the church, and how the Feast of the Assumption is basically, as we know, like kind of a pathetic, lame fairy story that's been foisted upon us. Don't worry, you don't have to believe it. It's basically, uh, yeah, it's basically something made up by a disordered celibate man somewhere, and it's total crap. And so, we'll have our mass. But so, and then he gives a chance to I'm like steaming, right? And um and just the absurdity of it. And these women are slavishly listening. And then we had a chance to share our own reflection. So every single person, and there were also a couple of nuns there, which was so sad. And part of this is the, I think, backlash of course, we've gone, it seems like Ireland has gone from one extreme to the other, where there really were, way too much confluence of church and state, and people, the fire and brimstone, total misinterpretation of the Gospels, and too much power, and all kinds of stuff that did cause a ton of harm. But this pendulum has swung so far in the other direction. And this is, to me, what you get when you, um, with our human attempts to make the church more inclusive. It can't be more inclusive. Christ has died on the cross for all humanity. You cannot get any wider than that. And and so what you get is the I feel like Satan never laughs harder and is more delighted than when we ourselves are sort of binding our own chains. And here are these women apparently wounded or disenfranchised with the church. I mean, it's like, why even do what you want? And my heart goes out to your wounds, but why, in the context of what purports to be a Catholic mass, why? I guess you could say, well, the heart there, the heart is there, and thus, I mean, Christ can stand it. The Lord knows. The offenses to him. It's not, certainly not to me, but sort of slavishly listening to this guy, this male priest, telling them how oppressed they are and degrading our exemplar, our blessed mother, who is precisely our model for total freedom and total offering of ourselves. Um, anyway, I did not. I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted to say, I am not I revere the assumption. I mean, my heavens, this is our blessed mother. You're darn right, she deserved a special way of going into heaven. I love it. The assumed body and soul. We can't really understand. It's shrouded in mystery, but how fantastic. She alone among women, crowned queen of heaven and earth. Really? You're going to take this away from me, from us? So anyway, I just wanted to read, and again, I don't want to get across, oh, I'm so, I know what it's all about, and they didn't. It's not that. It's the sorrow of having, under the best of intentions, but having removed from us, or depriving us of the treasury of the church. I'm just going to read a little bit from the Rosary of Our Lady by Romano Guardini. I've referenced this before. I mean, I'm sure he wrote it back in the 50s or something, but I like him a lot. He's a great quote. I should dig it up. This is something about anyone who's just anyone who really sort of ponders deeply or thinks about the human condition and the cross is like almost prima facie a depressive, as he was. He really struggled with depression. Romano Guardini, a great theologian from the kind of mid 1950s or so. And anyway, but he writes, it's just this very simple but beautiful book about the rose. He's talking about the crucifixion, the fifth sorrowful mystery, the Rosary. And he ends his reflection with, but where in all this does Mary remain? She hasn't been, of course, the Rosary is a prayer to and through Mary. We have not spoken of her because Scripture, in its account of the last days of Jesus, does not do so. She is mentioned only at the end when we are told that, quote, now there was standing by the cross of Jesus his mother, end of quote. This sentence covers all the preceding events. She always stood beneath the cross and never withdrew from the holy and terrible domain of Christ's passion. Every breath the Lord drew passed through Mary's breast. Every throb of his heart was her own, and nothing happened to him that had not also penetrated her soul, as Simeon had foretold. So we must draw her into all of these events. She is the reason that I do not run away when my faint-heartedness becomes unbearable, but that I remain. she herself remained, quote, until all was consummated, and so must I. So that's just a little bit of what it means to be me, to be a woman, and why I celebrate and revere womanhood and our wonderful characteristics, that of course do not preclude in no way in, insane strength, fortitude, perseverance, all of the things. But if you're after worldly power, I think is when you want to repudiate the best characteristics of being a woman. Not that we can't compete if we want to in the world as well, but anyway. And then I just want to mention, I just posted, it's a reposting. I wrote about this back in 2015, but it just as far as a film, and that is Pier Paolo Pasolini's. This is the Uber film for Lent and Easter, The Gospel According to St. Matthew, 1964. Pasolini, as you may know, was, God bless him, he was sort of lapsed, somewhat virulently anti-Catholic, and yet obviously could not totally ever leave his childhood faith. And the story goes, he was in Assisi for some reason. He kind of got stuck there. I think he was there for a film forum or something. And he read all four Gospels. There's nothing in his room but the Bible or the Gospels. And he read all four Gospels, and he was absolutely entranced with the Gospel of St. Matthew, and ended up making a film that has been called by the Vatican the best film about Jesus Christ that has ever been made. And I haven't seen them all, but I can't imagine, from my point of view, a better film. I'm rewatching it now, and it's on the Criterion Channel. I'm sure you can rent it anywhere. And he had his own mother played, who he lived with, even though he was like this gay hustler, and was murdered, by the way, in a kind of late night pickup gone wrong. Very, very sad, died fairly young. Lived with his mother his whole life. She, I'm sure, was very faithful, but he cast her as the kind of Mary as an adult, as an older uh, woman, and had a lot of unknowns, and cast as Christ, to me, the perfect guy. This, I can't remember, this is like Enrique something or other. It was his first, he was I think an engineering student, and it was his first, maybe his only role that he ever played. He played Christ just beautifully. The music is eclectic soundtrack. St. Matthew's Passion, beautiful African liturgy, the Missa Luba, Odetta, I think, singing Motherless Child. It's just, you'll probably either love it or hate it, but I just think it is one of the crowning achievements of film, and especially, as the Vatican said, unbelievable film about Christ. There's no dialogue except the actual words of St. Matthew's Gospel. So a lot of it is silent, and it's just masterful. Anyway, there you go. Up with womanhood. Yeah, I'm just thinking of Christ. What must have been going through his head and heart as he approached what he knew was going to be his passion. So these next few weeks are, of course, very, very, the deepest, really, days of liturgy in the whole year. So, okay.